What up, y'all? It's Mr. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Armor June Giraffa, coming at you with the first episode of the Megacolony Trap House. Today, we are going to be talking about my regrets in Vanguard. It's actually pretty interesting. But before I do that, yesterday in Japan, well, it's Wednesday in Japan, but Tuesday over here, they finally came out with their restriction list, the update. So basically, Otis is at 4, and Barco, TikTok worker, and what else was it? Whatever that card that everybody was using in Seven Seas Grade One Rush, Night Runner, I think that's what his name was. Yeah, they're all still at 1, but they can be used as starting Vanguards again. At the same time, for some reason, there's going to be this infinite loop that's in Pale Moon when like the Pale Moon stuff come out in the standard. So they decided that they were going to make it to where you can either use 4 purple trapezes or 4 jumping jills, and for some reason that makes an infinite loop. So that's restricted. And then at the same time, they talked about how Angel Feathers is going to be Protect Clan. Obviously everybody saw that coming. I mean, if Angel Fez was something else, that would have surprised the hell out of everybody, but everybody already knew that was going to be Protect Clan. But the problem is that now that there's a bunch of Angel Feather cards on the watch list, which is actually pretty weird. The weirdest one, in my honest opinion, is one of the Gavrils. One of the Gavril grade 3s, that is. And I kind of understand why, because Angel Feathers kind of sort of makes the Protect gift very busted, and I can understand that. But they update, originally it was 4 cards. It was Gavril, one of the Celestials, um one of the grade 2s and one of the grade 1s. I can't remember the name, and for some reason this list is not loading, so I can't necessarily see the names. So I'll basically put that all in the description. But recently today, they also put the grade 3 no seal on the list as well. So Angel Feathers may be tier 1 when standard comes out. That's going to be actually pretty interesting in my honest opinion. But enough with that. Um, there's other people who already did, updates on the list and everything like that. Everybody's already, did everything with that. However, in my honest opinion, it's Japan for one. So everybody trying to buy up all the Barcos, the Lus, and the Flogos, stop it. You need help. Anyway, with that being said, now it's time for me to actually start the real episode on, all my regrets when it comes to the game and whatnot. Now, I'm going to tell you now, a majority of the regrets is mainly because I really wouldn't say it's a financial situation, but a lot of it is because of money. So I'm going to just throw that out there right now. So, quickly before I start, and the reason why this is the case is because when I started the game back in 2014. I don't remember what set came out exactly around that time. All I remember was um season 3 was barely starting, if I remember correctly. I am not too sure. I gotta remember that. I gotta relook everything. But anyway, I was still by this time I was still in die hard in Yu-Gi-Oh. So all of my focus was still on Yu-Gi-Oh. It wasn't really Vanguard. I should have put a lot more focus on it, but let's be real. At that particular time, I was never expecting Yu-Gi-Oh to get as shitty as it got now. So, in my honest opinion, I don't know, man. But anyway, I didn't really play for the first 2 years of Vanguard, I guess, if that makes sense. No, wait, 3 years. I forgot. It started 2011. What the fuck? Anyway, I haven't started in the first 2.5 years of Vanguard, so, that's a thing. So, one of the things that I started out with was like a Great Nature deck, and it wasn't really a full fledged Great Nature deck. It was just me basically making a 50 card deck out of like commons and rares. Understandable, you know. That's basically all the shop had because around the time that shop was just now getting Vanguard stuff in, so they didn't really have much besides commons and rares, and I decided to make a deck out of that because let's be real, making the trial deck was expensive as hell back in the day. When all the trial decks are like $15 a piece, and you have to buy four of them fuckers, so you had to spend $60 on a trial deck. That shit was whack, yo. Not to mention that it didn't convince me at the time because because Yu-Gi-Oh structure decks are like $10. Some of them were even like you can even get like a few seven if you get lucky. But most of the structure decks and starter decks in Yu-Gi-Oh were always $10. So or $9 to $10. So it was always hard for me to be like, why would I spend $60 on four trial decks when I can just buy three structure decks for half the price? So you can already see where this is going. But anyway, so what happened was the decks that I wanted to get into originally were all of the Zoo Nation decks because all three of the Zoo Nation decks had like some type of impact on me. You know, it got my interest because it was like great natures. They were pretty interesting. I'm not going to tell you the real reason for that. You can basically figure that out on your own. Mega Colony, I feel like at that particular time, Mega Colony had the most interesting mechanic out of anything. You know, yeah, Link Jokers was there around the time, and that was understandable. You had Nubatama exist back in the day, so but at the same time, they didn't really have much to offer, so that was a little bit understandable why I didn't get into Nubatama sooner. Like eventually, I did get into Nubatama, but it was like it wasn't when I first started the game. Um, then you had like Neo Nectars. In my honest opinion, Neo Nectars has one of the best artworks out of any of the clans in the game. And that was one of the things that intrigued me to get into Neo Nectars was mainly the artwork because the artwork was amazing. It was all colorful and it was all interesting, and it stood out compared to all of the other clans. And it's weird because it's like, well, yeah, it's a bunch of plants and fruits, fighting against a lot of other people. Of course, it's going to stand out. But, even the stuff like the Musketeers, for a prime example, yeah, the Musketeers stood out a lot compared to everybody else in the game. So, of course, that intrigued me a lot. Especially Musketeers. Musketeers is my shit. But, unfortunately, your boy couldn't afford Musketeers back in the day. So, yeah. Even my most expensive, like, Yu-Gi-Oh deck, I didn't spend too much time on it because even in Yu-Gi-Oh, I was a budget player, so that caused a lot of problems. It wasn't even that fact. It was also the fact that your boy was broke, broke as a joke. But anyway, um, so one of the things I wanted to do in Neo Nectars was create Musketeers, but of course, Musketeers was hell of expensive back in the day because like what Cecilia's was like almost $20 a piece if I remember correctly. Um, a lot of the other Musketeers like Rebecca and Antonio and a couple of other ones, they were stupidly expensive too. So, it was very, all the stuff that you need in Musketeers to make Musketeers what it was stupidly expensive back in the day. And it took me forever to build that deck all the way to 100% because for one, even though Neo Nectars is going to be one of the decks I was going to use, it wasn't like my complete main focus. It was like secondary compared to Mega Colony, of course, since I am a Mega Colony main. But um, My issue was like, yo, first I'm gonna fix Megacolony to a point where I need to get it working, and then at the same time I'll probably start like a little bit of Neo Nectar here and there since it's also expensive. But honestly, ooh, excuse me. Honestly, the thing that made Honey, in my honest opinion, expensive was Paralyzed Madonna. Because for all the new players who played like, a little bit past the G era, back in the day PGs are like $10, $20 a piece. Oh my god, PGs were expensive as fuck back in the day. So honestly, the fact that they were stupidly expensive, like especially Paralyzed Madonna. It was Paralyzed Madonna, and it was the Grand Blue PG at the time that had the worst of it because they were the decks that didn't really get too much support, and at the same time, their main support wasn't really focused, around the Sentinels. So of course, having something like Paralyzed Madonna was like $20, $25 a piece. It literally depended on the time because, sometimes Paralyzed Madonna was like a $12 card, and then if it started to get like a lot harder to find, it'll go up to like 20, 25. So yeah, you needed four of them fuckers. Man, that shit was annoying to get. Hardly anybody had it online, and when people had it online, it wasn't for a very decent price. So it made it a lot harder. It didn't even help for the fact that when May County got support in Infinite Rebirth, all we got left was what's his face? Basically, the Ladybug, Machini Ladybug, and that was a quintet wall. So now you have to make your deck like, oh yeah, we're gonna use two quintet walls and two, paralyzed Madonnas because it makes the deck a lot more affordable. And then it didn't help the fact that we never got another Sentinel until like what Soul Strike against the Supreme. So that makes a lot more sense. But getting a little bit all sidetracked, it was a lot easier getting the Neo Nectar PGs because there was a lot of them. There was a few. They got a lot of them. It was like the Maiden of one. They came out with like the Musketeer one. Then they had like the Quintet wall. Every other set like that Neo Nectar's getting support, they had like some type of PG. So it was a little bit understandable that theirs is a lot more affordable. This didn't even help for the fact that when I started out going to what was it? It was my very first regionals. I think I was only like 3 months into the game, 2 or 3 months into the game, and Neo Nectars, I had to go into it because it was the only deck I had four PGs in. My Mega Colony deck only had like one PG, and there was no way I was going to go into that tournament with one PG. But I would say one of the worst things that had happened when I was using Neo Nectars was the deck wasn't even complete. Not to mention that it had no synergy whatsoever. And it was like, for one, I was using the reverse. I was using, the maiden of, the Venus flytrap chick. I can't think of her name at the moment. But I was using the regular one and the reverse one. And then I was also using like that 10K musketeer that 10K grade 3 musketeer that like gained 2K whenever he attacked on the Vanguard or the rear guard circle. I was also using him. And all the musketeer based cards that was in there was basically all the cheaper ones that had little to no synergy whatsoever. Like I was using all the tulips, and all of the tulips musketeers were like the damage inflictors. So yeah, I was into the tournament running damage inflictors, and then at the same time I had what was it? It was the white musketeer one, the one where if the attack hits, then I get to unflip the damage. He wasn't too bad, even like in a deck like that, but it was still weird as hell to look at. Then I also had like the stand trigger that you look at the top four and get a musketeer, and it sucked because like 80% of the time I would use it, I would never have a musketeer to to call out. And honestly, I can understand why I lost that, not just because of the deck, but because I was very unexperienced with the game. Like I was still learning the game mechanics. I wasn't highly into it at that particular time because I was still in the Yu-Gi-Oh phase and whatnot. So, all my time still went to Yu-Gi-Oh compared to Vanguard and whatnot. But honestly, you know, it went a lot. My second run in the regionals went like a way better than that one. So man, that's ridiculous in my honest opinion. But I feel like if I was to redo all that and relive it, I'll probably do it again. But eventually, like a few months later, when I finally got a chance to get the money, I finally got a decent Musketeer deck. It wasn't like the best one that was using the Black Rose, the Black Rose Musketeers, like the licorice one and stuff. When the Legions came out, it was like the other one. It was the sisters, the Panoli and stuff. I was using those Musketeers, and even though like eventually like during the start era, I finally got my Cecilias and finally got a decent Musketeer deck, I had to sell it. I'm so mad that I had to do that. Um, at the same time, when when they were announcing the G series and they were announcing that, and they're announcing Asha, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick up this trial deck. Everybody wanted to pick up, the Gear Chronicle one, and everybody wanted to, some people wanted to pick up the Royal Paladin one, and I was like, no, 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 I'll just pick up the Neo Nectar one because, of course, at that time, not too many people really picked it up. Everybody was always trying to try Gear Chronicle because it was a new clan. And then, of course, people who wanted to stay in Royal Paladins was picking that one up. But, I was like, yeah, 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 I'll pick up the Neo Nectar one. This is actually pretty cool. Um, I was not expecting Asha to be so expensive. Oh, boy. It didn't even help that Neo Nectar's got support in nearly every major set. Oh my god. I was like, I don't have the money for this. It's weird because I didn't have the money for it. And again, Neo Nectars wasn't really my it wasn't really my main focus. But I feel like if Neo Nectars is my main focus, I would probably be an Asha player right now. But unfortunately I'm not. I had to give up playing Asha like around set six because that's when I realized that I've fallen so behind in trying to build this Asha deck that I don't even know what's going on anymore. So by that time, and that's sad because that's when she was getting hella good. So by that particular time, I just decided that I can't afford this deck. I have to go to something else. I have to stick to what I have at the moment because basically this is what I can afford, and that was basically it. Honestly, I would probably say like the first year and a half, it was basically if whatever deck I play, it had to be very budgety because outside of my main decks, I couldn't really afford to make it into like a top tier, the best that the deck can do type thing. So let's see, what other decks that I had that basically I had to do that with. I remember another one that I had to do, which I kind of regret, was Narukami. I was actually very interested in Narukami, and honestly, I feel like I'm not going to say that I feel like I could have been like a very good Narukami player, but it was one of those things where Narukami was kind of getting way too expensive to even do as well. But I feel like one of the worst things I've ever done when it came to that, because I tried to build eradicators. For one, I was being a dumbass and decided to buy the trial decks. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with buying the trial decks, but what didn't click was that the third Narukami trial deck that we were supposed to get, we never got. Instead, they put all of the cards that some of the cards that was supposed to be in there into one of the Legion sets. Man, that sucked. And it was weird because I bought both of the Narukami trial decks thinking I was gonna do something. But if I just done just a little bit of research, and I would have realized that I was fucking up. Not to mention that I don't know if anybody remembers V Monday. Yeah, I was trying to make a deck out of one of V Monday shit. Very bad idea. Very bad idea. Any super veteran player will tell you that V Monday was not the best place to be trying to look for deck lists. Oh boy, that was bad. But anyway, personally, I would probably low key go into Narukami, but I kind of feel like that is kind of too late for me to do that. Narukami's still a pretty good clan. I still like the clan actually. It's just I don't know. At this particular moment, I can't really support it. But if I could, I would. I'll definitely tell you that. Another one that I kind of mad that I didn't spend too much time trying to get into was Ezel. Oh boy. Um, I think one of the interesting things that wanted me to build an Ezel deck was that I thought it was a very interesting gold paladin deck, and two, the fucking hair. The fucking hair is amazing. Lions is also one of my favorite, type of animals. So of course that intrigued me to build the deck even more. But man, the hair was amazing. Even though I still to this day don't know how he fight with hair that long. Like it's literally touching the ground. You were literally a close combat warrior. How the hell do you fight with hair like that? But anyway, that's besides the point. The point is, I wanted to build Ezo, and I never got a chance to. One of them was because, of course, money comes around again. Didn't really have the money to really build it, so I couldn't really play it at its best. But it was weird because the one time I could, I will admit, you guys fucked it up. And here's why. So, around the time where I was building the Ezo deck, they were releasing stuff for set 7. You know, Absolute Ezo was about, if I remember correctly at that time, it was like $20, $25 and whatnot. It was starting to go down because, you know, nobody was really playing Ezo at that time. Everybody was playing, Gugrit and a little bit of like Liberators here and Liberator Grade 1 Rush here and there. So I was slowly building my Ezo deck. And, all I needed was the Absolute Ezos, the Ezel Scissors, 2 more Ezel Scissors, and I forgot what else did I need. And I was like, okay, my next paycheck, which is going to come in 2 weeks, I'm going to be able to get this. Guess what happened within those 2 weeks? The Ezel support came out. And everybody bought out that Ezel shit. So guess how much Absolute Ezel was? 50 fucking dollars. 50 plus actually. Ezel Scissors was almost $80 a piece. I was like, I'm not spending my money on this shit. What? No, I'm not doing that. So I decided to scrap the idea altogether. So now I'm here stuck with like half, not even half an Ezel deck over here trying just with gold powder and stuff just sitting there. Not being able to use that shit because y'all motherfuckers just decided to buy all that shit out for no apparent reason. I was like, fuck. This is when everybody was doing like the whole, Ezo Gugrit builds and stuff like that. When that was a thing. Remember when that was a thing? That was actually pretty interesting. But no, y'all decided to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna just buy all the Ezo shit for no apparent reason. Fuck y'all. Anyway, um, my biggest regret was not building the Ezo deck a lot sooner and not really having the money to actually buy that shit a lot sooner. Next one, It's probably one of my biggest regrets, as big as the Neo Nectar one. Getting rid of my Chrono Fang deck. Now, Chrono Fang wasn't really doing nothing because Chrono Jet always got the support. And it's weird because everybody thinks that, like, yo, he hates, Gear Chronicles because he, like, talks so much shit about it. And I'm all like, no, you got it all wrong. I actually like Gear Chronicles. However, I just don't like the shit that Gear Chronicles do. For a prime example, I feel personally that they're the reason why 2016 Vanguard was the worst year to ever play Vanguard. And maybe one day I would do a podcast based on that. Second, it's always because whenever they get support, it's always going to Chrono Jet, not anybody else when it comes to Gear Chronicles. And it gets up to a point where it's like, it gets up to a point where if you want to play competitively, you have no choice but to play Chrono Jet. Even though personally, I feel like that not only Chrono Fang, but a couple of the other stuff that Gear Chronicles had to offer was like, it was low key. I feel like they were a lot more interesting than what everybody was playing, the Melon Wombo combo system. I feel like that everything else is a lot more interesting in my honest opinion. Chrono's Command, even the Legion. The Legion didn't even do shit, and I feel like that was a lot more interesting to play in Gear Chronicles than Chrono Jet, personally. Um, Last was because of this, it was very hard to play anything outside of whatever the meta version of Chrono Jet was. You know, um, Everybody at that time was playing Melon Wombo combo. Even now everybody's playing Z. To be honest, I like ZTB a lot better than the Melon Wombo combo thing ever was. Is I feel like ZTB was just a lot more interesting. It had a lot more interesting concept in my honest opinion. You know, I feel personally that the old school style of Gear Chronicles, when it was all about spinning stuff back into the bottom of the deck, was a lot more interesting. So, not the timely stuff. The timely was kind of okay, but personally, if I had to really choose a style of Gear Chronicles, it has to be the old school style where you're just putting stuff back into the deck, clearing the field, because I don't know. I just felt like that the whole aggro control based style was a lot more interesting, in my honest opinion. And that's what I do like about ZTB is the whole aggro control style and whatnot. Even though I don't really like Heritage that much, I feel like that the card. I'm not going to say that Heritage is broken, but it does cause a lot of problems. So yeah. Anyway, um, I was a huge Chrono Jet fan. I was playing Chrono Jet because at that time I was a huge Ryuzu fan. I feel like Ryuzu was probably one of the better villains and probably one of the best villains that Vanguard has ever had, in my honest opinion. So, because of that, I wanted to get Chrono Fang really bad, but of course, there was no clear way of really building it, and there was no way to make it as good as whatever the Melon Wombo combo shit that everybody else is doing. So, when I had to come up to a point to where I had to sell a few decks, he was just one of them, and honestly, I really regret that. Not to mention that this was the only deck I had SP'd. I made Megacolony, and I have never had Megacolony SP'd out. But Chrono Fang was my only SP'd out deck. But I'm gonna be real with you. The only reason why that happened was because one of my friends owed me money and couldn't really pay it off for me. So instead of giving me the money, he decided to trade all of my regular cards that I have for Chrono Fang and trade me all the SPs. So Not only I had a Chrono Fang deck, I had a Chrono Fang SP'd out deck. That's how much I like Chrono Fang and didn't really mind it. That I would rather SP out Chrono Fang over my own main deck, and I sold that shit, and I'm fucking mad over that. Probably one of my biggest regrets, in my honest opinion. So I don't know, man. That I would just I just have to say that that was one of my biggest regrets. Right next to No Seal, but I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But so again, personally, if I was to do it over again, I would low key build Chrono Fang if I had the money to do it at the moment. But at the moment, I kind of don't. Even though it's a very cheap deck, I can possibly sell one of my other decks just to do it, but then I would just regret that too. Honestly, um, the whole deck selling thing sometimes has to come because of money issues. Other times it's basically I want to finish off a deck, and I just need that extra money to actually finish it off. But part of the reason why I do that a lot is because that's what I did in Yu-Gi-Oh. Sometimes I would build a deck and then sell it off and then build something else with whatever money I sold that shit off with. So because I did that often in Yu-Gi-Oh, sometimes I do that in Vanguard as well. So that's a little bit understandable. Um, in mine, it also is kind of sort of like it's also thinning out decks because sometimes I would have way too much. Like there was at one point where I had about 15 Vanguard decks, and I was like, I have way too many decks, and this is way too many decks to carry around. So obviously, I need to sell some of these. And sadly, Chrono Fang was on the list. Um, man, next one was No Seal. No Seal was also a deck that I used to have, and this was after the whole thing when No Seal was tier 1 too. So that's a little bit understandable. I wanted to play Angel Feathers. I thought that Angel Feathers was a very interesting clan too. Obviously, I made No Seal because I feel like that I was a lot more of a huge fan of No Seal than I was with Gavriel. Nothing wrong with Gavriel. It's just that No Seal was a lot more interesting. And apparently, because of that, I for a long time I was actually winning games with it though, but one day I was like, it's starting to get like slightly boring and whatnot, and um, I don't know, man. It's starting to get slightly boring, and No Seal got no support in set 13, so I decided to sell it off. If I would have known about the No Seal, I would have known about No Seal Geese, I probably would have kept it a little bit longer. But I kind of sold it like around the time set 13 was coming out because a lot of the Angel Feather stuff was getting scarce and getting high in price, and I was like, I might as well sell it off right here and there. So that's a little bit understandable. Personally, I would probably rebuild No Seal if No Seal doesn't get hit. It looks like it's going to get hit, and I don't want that to happen, but if Bushy Road hits it, Bushy Road hits it. It doesn't really matter. Um, Next thing that I wish I would have never sold was Night Rose. Night Rose was another thing, and no, I didn't sell it off because oh yeah, Grand Blue was no longer a good deck. It just got boring after a while. um, it was one of those things where it was like I love the deck and everything, but it kind of got boring after a while. But man, I think the funniest thing about me selling that off was my friend was so mad because he thought it was like one of the biggest betrayals ever. Because he was all like, "You sold Nightbait?" Because I used to call No Seal. I mean, not No Seal. I used to call Night Rose Nightbait whenever I play her, and he was very surprised that I sold that. He called, if there was like a thing called like the top 10 anime betrayals, that would definitely be one of them, in my honest opinion. So, I honestly regret that because Grand Blue, in my honest opinion, was probably one of the most funnest decks out of all of them. Mainly because like the whole mill thing and because of the second hand, using your grave as a secondary hand and stuff like that. But in my honest opinion, you know, I like the deck. I like the deck a lot. If I was to go back in the Grand Blue, I would do it. I don't know if I'll go back into Night Rose. Like I kind of want to, but not really. Like my original favorite unit from Grand Blue was Kakaitis, which I still have the core to Kakaitis, by the way. So I technically didn't sell it. But honestly, I don't know. It was actually pretty interesting in my honest opinion. Um, what else was there that I kind of sort of wish I? Oh, okay. So this is not necessarily about selling the deck. This is actually about not getting into it. Shaharat. I wish I would have gotten into Shaharat. I'm not gonna lie. Shaharat seemed very fun. Like, I had like an Amon deck, and I was going to play Amon for fun because one of the things I wanted to try was Dark Irregulars. So if I didn't really like it, I would have been like, it's Amon. I didn't really spend. I spent some money on it, but I didn't spend a lot of money on it, so it really wouldn't matter at the end of the day. So I really wouldn't care. But if I like it, I'll probably go into Shaharat. And I liked it a lot. I will admit that. When I played it, I liked the combos that was happening and stuff like that. I thought it was very fun. I played, with a couple of my friends who had Shaharat. I played their deck and had very fun with it. And I was like, you know what? I wish I would have got into this deck a lot sooner because this deck seems fun as fuck. And it really was. Man, honestly, if there was one deck I wish I would have had, it definitely would have been Shaharat. But unfortunately, especially at his prime, Shaharat at his prime was amazing. Well, actually, he's still at his prime. What am I talking about? Shaharat is still a decent deck to have in his current meta. But I don't know, man. When it comes to that, I kind of wish I got into Shaharat. I'm not gonna lie. Low key, I still kind of want to, but not with dust being like at 100 something plus dollars. Nah, I'm not doing that. But anyway, um, but outside of all of that, I'll probably have to say, with all of that together, my biggest regret in Vanguard basically has to be all of the decks at once. I feel like my biggest regret in Vanguard has to be um building so many decks and not really having the money to build the decks. I feel like if I had like a little bit more money management and I had a little bit more I planned a lot more when it came to deck building. Low key, I think I probably would have had like a lot more decks that were either finished or probably even had a Shahara deck or whatever. Maybe I probably would have even had that Asha deck too. But personally, I feel like um, one of the biggest things I regret was not having enough money management when it came to deck building altogether. But that's about it. I kind of feel like I rambled on long enough, especially like when I was in the Neo Nectar part. I think the Neo Nectar part alone was like over 10 minutes. But anyway, that's my podcast for right now. Join me next week when I talk about my honest opinion on Vanguard Next and Vanguard Z because I didn't really like it too much. I don't know about everybody else, but I'll probably go into full detail, probably like a little less over whatever the current minutes of this is right here, and go over it because I made a poll on my Facebook page, and obviously both of these got a tie, so I decided to do this one first. So for now, my name is Mrs. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Armor June Giraffe, signing out. Tell me in the comment section or whatever I post this at What is your regrets when it comes to the game of Vanguard? What does everybody regret doing? Rather it's building a deck, something about the game, getting into the game later, doing whatever. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I would like to see. It doesn't have to be your biggest regret, but just something that you regret playing. About playing the game of Vanguard. Oh, excuse me. With that being said, I'm definitely signing out now.